I want him to see.
Yeah. Is there? Okay, it's a different topic.
They have
Jack?
this. They gave me that white thing. It's over there.
Yeah. Oh, this one.
Mm.
Right.
Now I want the person on the screen
Yeah.
to see the members.
You have to go from there.
Hmm?
From there.
So I'll have to set it up like this. Just move by see.
So you are zooming this.
Yeah. Now, in the meantime, there are some documents I need to be photocopied.
As writing to the cabinet secretary, the governor of Nyandarua, and maybe 1 or 2 writing requesting for additional equipment. And those letters I sent to the principal secretary as it is supposed to be.
Waziri Balozi, now, what you are saying that you didn't see the contracts is not necessarily correct. I have with me a letter dated 22nd January 2016, written and signed by yourself, addressed to Attorney General Professor Gideon Muigai and CS Treasurer then Henry Rotich, with the heading Managed Equipment Services Contracts and the tender numbers quoted. And in this letter, you extensively make reference to the contracts, to the letters of support, and to all issues pertaining to these contracts, including novations, including assignments, transfers, subcontracts, and so on and so forth. So when you say, Daktari, that you didn't know anything about the contracts and what had been signed, it may not necessarily be correct, because it's signed Dr. Mailu, EBS Cabinet Secretary. How did you make an extensive reference to contracts you had not seen?
That is correct. I said I had never seen the contracts, but that may be, yes, if that is the letter you have, I may have signed, and I cannot recollect
it. Actually signed, unless you have to say
yes. I might have signed if you authenticate the letter, but seeing the contracts themselves and the documents of the MES project in totality. And I want to be on record that several times we went to the Parliamentary Health Committee and even to the Budget Committee, and those documents were persistently being requested by the Parliament to be submitted, and those documents were not availed to my knowledge. And therefore, when I say I never saw the document, I might have signed the letter, of course, which I want to believe was drafted, and I want to believe the contents might be correct to transmit to the National Treasury. And that doesn't mean I saw the contracts.
But Dr. It is very bizarre that under your watch as minister, there were variations to contracts in Lot 7, in Lot 1, in Lot 2, in Lot 5, and Lot 6, when you are minister. Under your watch as minister, all the 5 letters of support to these contracts were written, including the 2 to General Electric and Philips being different from the other 3 and amounting, according to the Attorney General, to sovereign guarantees. Under your watch, a contract was executed with a company called 7 Seas to set up a nerve center at Kenyatta National Hospital to interlink all the 98 hospitals with the center so that whatever imaging and professional requirement they wanted could be achieved in real time. Under your watch, you recommended to the Treasury to lift the levying of money directly from counties from 95 million to 200 million.
It's 8 hours.
To 200 million. Something that has been a national outrage. And are you telling this committee and Kenyans, my brother and classmate, that you are doing all this without knowing what the contracts were all about as a prudent minister?
Honorable Senator, you have alluded to many issues about the contract. And I am basing my information on recollection. As I stated, I have no document and no information of the records which are kept by the Ministry of Health. I would indulge you if you can kind of retrace your question, because there are many issues you have raised. First of all, the issue of variations. I want to believe any variations which were carried out in those projects based on requests of counties or the users were variations which I want to believe the principal secretary, who was the accounting or is the accounting officer, tackled with the prudence to ensure that any variation is within the stipulations of the law and the Procurement Act, within the limits of those contracts which were given. And therefore, that being a procurement process, I was not involved. Therefore, as far as variations are concerned, I want to believe so. As to escalation of the cost, I want also to believe that escalation of cost is within the parameters of the variations, which should fall within the limits of any contract which is signed and the variation.
Okay, let me not cut you short, but you know that, sir. Okay, I'm advised to let you finish.
Finish that time first.
And when on the issue of escalation of cost to the counties, which if I got you correct, you say move from 95 million to 200 million. That one I'm not aware. And that has to be explained for me to appreciate, because the variations which were carried out would have been within the limits of the contract. Now, if that is the amount the counties are paying, then I'm not aware, and if it happened after my departure from the ministry. As far as the letters of support which you said were issued, I want this committee to know the letters which I'm aware and which I handled were those 2 letters. And I want also, and I'm basing this on recollection, to say the MES project, which I believe during the signing must have been cleared to be signed and to be executed. When I came to the ministry, my responsibility was to ensure any contract obligation which was to the ministry and to the government we continue to implement those contracts consistent with what was obtaining in the ministry. And therefore, mine was not to go back and re-examine the contracts which were signed previously, my predecessors. And I want to believe this committee can get appropriate answers from my colleagues who were there in the ministry before and after. The health information, healthcare information technology project, this was already conceptualized under GE. And this particular component of the project was not implemented when the first component was being implemented. And when it came to the time to implement that project, which indeed is the project which was advertised and awarded during my time in that ministry, as I recall, this project was first to be implemented by GE. And upon request to give the cost of implementing that project, it was realized the project was to cost a lot of money, which in that case was close to 11.4 billion shillings. And therefore, as is prudent, the ministry and the principal secretary went ahead and advised that this is costly and we need to float a tender. And this was done and awarded at a cost of 4.7 billion. Indeed, if we want to believe that project proceeded prudently and was implemented to meet the expectations which were in the documents and the expectations of the government, then it would have saved the exchequer and the people 6.8 billion shillings. I want to say that contract was awarded towards the end of the year 2017, and I left the ministry January when the project was being implemented. Therefore, despite the problems which you allude to, Honorable Senator, that project began well and was supposed to save money and to connect the various hospitals which benefited from the MAES equipment.
Daktari, just hold on. There's a question for you from Senator Wambua.
Yeah, Balozi.
Yes, Honorable Senator.
You know, when you begin by saying that you have not seen a contract, but then you proceed to defend the contract and defend the people that signed the contract. Mine was not a question. Mine was just, perhaps I should not be doing it, just to give you direction. Don't speak for people who did not even give you the contract in the first place.
Honorable Senator, I'm struggling to hear you.
You can't hear?
I can't get you.
And now?
Yes?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Because I'm saying, mine is not a question. Mine is actually a piece of advice. That you started by saying, you've never seen these contracts. But then you proceed to defend the same contracts. And defend the people that denied you a chance to see the contracts. My advice is, stick to your lane. Talk to us about what you know and what you did. What you saw. And what you saw. Don't talk to us about contracts that you never saw, letters that you never honored, or talking about people who must have followed due process. We don't know about that. You never
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Senator, for the advice.
Now, let's go back to our questions. Yes, Senator Mazzai.
Daktari Balozi.
Yes, Honorable Senator.
These contractual documents which you are signing, which you are sending with an enclosure with your letter. How do you send enclosed contractual documents without you, before signing the letter, which is basically, as you have admitted, that was placed on top of this document? How do you want us to believe that you don't even turn the next page to at least see the contractual documents to know what is contained inside, and yet you are there defending the same position and saying you do not know anything about it? You want us to accept that kind of an explanation, Dr.
Yes, Daktari.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Of course, on the face value, your assertion, you want it to reflect that, but I want to state that if you could let me the date of that letter, and this was a government contract which was going on, and a letter seeking, if it is the letters of support or sending to the National Treasury, I would have expected the Principal Secretary to have done due diligence and to have been satisfied. And I believe when they brought to me the material facts which were contained in that letter were reflected in the contracts. I think, as you know, a contract document is a lengthy document. It's a legalistic document. And the examination of that document lies on the purview of the Principal Secretary and the team in the ministry, which was executing that project. And therefore, and I did mention that those documents, particularly relating to the contract, I remember clearly how many times those contracts I asked them for, and those contracts were asked by the parliament, and how many times those documents, indeed the word were secret document. And I wondered as a minister, what could be secret to me in the Ministry of Health when I'm the cabinet secretary? I'm stating this because of the advice which the Honorable Senator extended to me. That was the buzzword. And I couldn't understand what is in this contract which was not to be revealed to the minister and to a committee or parliament when requested.
Exactly, Dr. You signed the letter that you have agreed, you signed that I told you, and that letter is making reference to various documents, including the contracts. Now you say, and I have no reason to doubt you, that you never saw these contracts. If you had read the new Constitution 2010, it no longer made the minister a ceremonial character in the ministry. Ministers take responsibility of what they do. Now, as a prudent minister, having been denied access to documents that are secret, the secrets of documents in ministries, and I tell you this for free because I've been a minister for a long time, is to maintain secrets between the ministry and the rest of the public, not within the ministry. A minister is the apex of the ministry. Now, if you didn't see these documents, my brother, why did you sign a letter going to your colleagues at the AG's office at the Treasury, making references to documents you have been denied to see? And we all know from, we can take judicial notice, that from the time you entered that ministry up to the time you left, the centerpiece of all your work and the controversies that surrounded what you are doing was this mess project. You are doing very good things, but this was the big blot on your stay at the Ministry of Health. So do we take it from you that you found this going on and you are never let to know what was going on and you left without knowing what was going on? Because when you vary a contract and start levying money from counties, from 95 million to 200 million, it can't be within the law because the law allows a variation of only up to 25%.
Daktari.
You hear me, brother?
Yes, Honorable Senator, I agree with you. And I also want to state that I would like to know the facts, because as far as I'm concerned, and I was not calculating the figures, I would like to say during that period when, if there are variations, I want to believe the principal secretary did them within the Procurement Act and the law. If indeed there is a variation beyond that, then yes.
Now, was there at any time the issues of variation brought to your attention when you are at the Ministry of Health?
As far as I said, the letters I might have received written directly to me by the counties, I forwarded to the principal secretary. After that, there was no discussion about any variation and the quantum which would have been incurred.
So you are not aware of variation of figures from 95 to 200 billion per county?
I'm not aware.
Was it during your time? May I ask him? Who served as a PS during your time? That line.
I had two principal secretaries,
Muraguri
and Mr. Coril.
Muraguri and Coril.
Yeah. Then Coril was the one who signed.
Okay, Daktari, can you respond to the other questions so that we can
Maybe one
progress?
question.
Yeah, Senator Langata has one question.
Daktari, you left the
Yes,
ministry.
Honorable Senator.
Specifically, you left the ministry when?
31st of January.
Which year?
2018.
Variations were done on 20th November 2017. Were you there in the office?
I was in the office.
You are not aware?
I'm not aware of the figures.
Daktari, you have talked about 2 letters of support issued to GE and Philips. Were the other contractors, offered these support letters according to maybe reference records that you made in the ministry? Were they also offered letters of support?
I cannot vouch for that because I didn't see them.
Now, Daktari, let's go to the question of GE. Now, as far as adverts are concerned, yeah, the original contractors are supposed to be manufacturers. Original manufacturers. Yeah? But when we interacted with GE, there was no original manufacturer, or rather there is no difference between original manufacturers and the local contractors. Is there anything you can explain as far as GE contract is concerned?
Honorable Chairperson, I would not know the criteria they use for the purposes of defining for the MES contract, as I had not joined the ministry then. But I know when you talk of original equipment manufacturer, it refers to organizations or companies which actually produce the equipment, and you end up having a contract with them to be able either to supply or to supply and install for the contracting party. Therefore, in general terms, the equipment and any contract should be with the original manufacturer. That is what I can state in general terms, not necessarily specific to the MES. But if by definition, it was supposed to go to original equipment manufacturers, that should have applied.
Daktari, now there was an audit query during your time of 5 billion. Yeah? Was there 5 billion, audit query of 5 billion by internal auditors? Does it have any relationship with MES project, the 5 billion?
Honorable Senator, that audit query, as far as I can recollect, had no relationship with the managed equipment scheme.
It has no relationship.
As far as I can recollect, it was that particular audit query was the financial management within the ministry and the reallocation of resources and applying of resources from the budget within lines, which I think the accounting officer applied. I do not recall it being related to the managed equipment scheme, but I stand to be guided.
Waziri, Daktari,
Yes, Honorable Senator.
do you know Kenya Bureau of Standards?
Yes.
When you are a minister, did you interact with them?
Not to my recollection.
Now I can make you recollect. The MD of Kenya Bureau of Standards appeared before this ad hoc committee, and there was a very bizarre piece of evidence tendered before us that a letter written by and signed by yourself to the MD of Kenya Bureau of Standards in 2016, directing them, contrary to the law, not to check autoclaves and radiology machines in regard to their conformity to standards, to be let in without any check. And that was a violation of the Kenya Bureau of Standards Act and all other enabling laws in terms of standardization, radioactivity, and protection of citizens from any harmful imports. Do you remember writing such a letter?
I do not, with all due respect, Honorable Senator, remember authoring such a letter. And that is a letter I would like to be authenticated.
We'll instruct our clerk to send it to you immediately by whatever means necessary. You look at it and in the next 1 day send us a response. Because if you did that, Balozi, it is a very serious aberration of the law. Very serious violation of the law. And even the Bureau of Standards MD who tendered the letter to us. Unfortunately, it's not here because it's not our normal sitting place. You directed, contrary to law, KBS not to inspect autoclaves and radiology machines. This is yet another letter that was placed before you to sign without reading through.
That, Honorable Senator, I would like to be authenticated, and if my signature was obtained fraudulently, that is a matter I would like to follow, and I would like the committee to follow, because I do not remember in the ministry interacting with the Kenya Bureau of Standards, and indeed to that extent.
Daktari.
Yes, Honorable Chairperson.
During your time, did you come across a company called IKM Advocates? And did they assist you in drafting any letters as far as GE and Philips is concerned?
Which company?
IKM, they are advocates hired by Ministry of Health.
Honorable Chairperson, I would like to state that I have never met them, but maybe, although I was cautioned not to speak about other people, maybe they were interacting with the principal secretary or the team, which was project management unit, but I never met any officer from that company.
Waziri, I'm still interested. You know, the budget cycle in Kenya, when a ministry prepares its budget, are we together?
Yes, Honorable Senator.
When a ministry prepares its budget, you go to the parliamentary committee that oversights your ministry and present your budget. If you agree with them, you may be called to the Parliamentary Budget Committee to present and defend your budget. And this process is led by the minister himself. Isn't that correct? Did you ever appear before parliamentary committees to present and defend your budget proposals?
I went to the Parliamentary Health Committee.
You presented and defended your budget. Correct?
Correct, Honorable Senator.
And before doing that, you must have sat in the ministry with your senior officers to realign and outline your budget before you go to the budget committee, to the health committee, correct?
That would be the case, Honorable Minister.
Did you do that?
Honorable Senator.
Did you ever do that while you are the ministry?
Honorable Senator, I had only one budget cycle when I was in the ministry.
That's fine. That one is the most important. Did you do that? Now, did you notice then in that budget that there was a shift on the mess item from 95 million per county per year to 200 million per county per year? That's a very huge leap that cannot escape the eye of the minister or anybody looking at the budget. Because when you are doing a budget, you look at your last year's budget and the variations you are putting in this year's budget.
Honorable Senator, sorry?
Did you notice that leap from 95 million per county on mess to 200 million per counties? Or again, this was top secret. They presented the budget to you and then they went and inserted and took to Parliament.
Honorable Senator, I did not come across that figure, and that figure was not brought to my attention. If at all, it was there during my time, and that figure was not brought to my attention by the accounting officer, and therefore I cannot speak with authority in terms of that variation. Yes, from what you are saying is a huge figure, if it is a figure of focus, and indeed of concern, but I did not come across that figure.
But Waziri, Balozi, there's a question that Senator Chambula asked, which you will not respond to.
Hello, I cannot hear.
Balozi.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm saying there's a question that Senator Chambula had asked you, and you have not provided an answer to. And it will be important. Before you went to defend the budget, your ministry, did you ever sit with your senior officers for briefing? Did they brief you on the budget?
Honorable Senator, I'm constrained to place before this committee the challenges I was facing in that ministry. As I said, with respect to this project and any financial matter which fell on the purview of the accounting officer.
Feel free to tell us everything, because the outcome of this process may have harmful consequences to you. So feel free to tell us everything you know and what you went through. If you just cut around and say, I may say, I might say, I will say, it doesn't help you.
I want to state that I was not taken through the budgeting process, and most of those meetings, including going to the budget committee of Parliament, the principal secretary used to attend. I never went to the parliamentary committee on the budget allocation, and there were challenges in the ministry in terms of the portfolio and the way the accounting officer viewed my involvement. And therefore, that goes to tell why I would say the documents, which I'm a witness not being submitted even to the parliamentary committee for a long time, for the period I was there. That was a major challenge of running that ministry. And if you will recall,
Daktari, let me ask you one more question. Did you come across a company called PKF while you were there? The service level monitoring of MESS project.
I recall there was a company by that name, but I never met the company, the people who are involved in that company in person.
Now, did you or has anybody brought to your attention that MESS project was facing any challenges at that particular time when you were there?
The challenges which this project was facing were brought to me by the project management unit, and the challenges which were involved as far as the implementation of the project is concerned were challenges which we tried to address during my period. And I must say, irrespective of not having been the deep knowledge of the contract, I tried my best to ensure that the project is implemented. These challenges, which were met by the contractors, were indeed challenges because equipment was delivered to facilities and to counties, and it was not possible either to install or to complete the process for various reasons. One, with regard to renal dialysis, it was a requirement apart from buildings to have water and clean water which could be used for purification to be able to offer dialysis. Therefore, some counties face the challenge of water, and therefore those equipment could not be installed despite being supplied. Two, the issue of buildings to install or space to put those equipments. There were instances where old buildings were given by the counties and needed to be renovated. Some were not adequate, and some were to be built afresh. And therefore, equipment found its way to the counties without adequate preparations. Power, electricity was key in some of the institutions because some of the equipment, particularly radiological equipment, required extra power, three-phase, or power to be able to function. And some facilities had either had inadequate power strength, that is phase one, and did not have phase three, or they didn't have power at all. So there were several, sorry.
Ambassador, you know you are now taking on a rigmarole of general statements. Those general statements are very unhelpful. You will help this committee because we are looking at a monstrous fraud committed on the people of Kenya. You would help this committee if you say, as a minister, I took an opportunity and visited Garbatula Hospital. I found equipment delivered, and it was lying in cartons. It was not being used. You would help us by saying, as minister, you visited Endebess in Trans Nzoia and you found the equipment lying in a container. Or that as minister, you visited Mombasa and you found equipment installed and working. That will help us. But those generalities cannot be zeroed onto anything. But the question is, Waziri, you had 2 PSS and you have cited your tribulations in the ministry, prompting me to tell you that you sound like you are a stranger in the palace. Now, stranger as you are, which of these PSS was standing in your way to know what was going on in the ministry? Remember, Wambua told you that if you are hell-bent on carrying other people's crosses, you will succumb to the weight of that cross.
I would say that the first principal secretary whom I worked with, I found it very difficult to be able to perform my duties effectively. And this goes. Sorry?
No, let me see.
Which
And-
is that?
No, don't.
Yes.
Yes.
And therefore, I felt my work was very impeded. And this we can see with also, you recall, and it's not a matter for this committee maybe, but it's a public knowledge. During the strikes which hit the country in December 2016, I faced the same challenge trying to resolve without any support. And therefore, I want to say that period of my tenure in the ministry was very challenging, and more so with this project in terms of understanding, in terms of traction as a ministry. And indeed, I want to be on record saying that I chaired many meetings with the contractors in the morning every 2 weeks to try and put back on track the implementation, to understand. And those minutes the project management unit should produce, tracking where we are with the installation of this equipment, county facility per facility, lot per lot, to be able to accelerate. And I want to say, when I received a new principal secretary, and I want to believe is when a lot of traction we got in terms of implementation, although there are challenges of equipment lying here and there, but there are many which came to be installed. So this is a matter which I want this committee to consider in all that.
Terry.
Yes, Honorable Senator, Chairperson.
Now, during variations, especially lot 1, there were some of the equipments, or rather the contractor was unable to deliver on the first part of the contract. But the ministry went ahead and varied the contract and gave more work when the initial contract was not even implemented. Did you come across that challenge at that particular time? Because you cannot give me a job I'm unable to do, and then you give me more, you know?
Honorable Chairperson, as I said, the variations, the effecting of the variations were carried out by the principal secretary, whichever out of one of the two, which I'm not sure which time it was, but nobody brought to my attention the fact that a particular contractor was not performing and could not be given additional, or was going to be given this additional. Once the request came, those which I had the privilege to see and forward to the principal secretary, I never got information thereafter as to whether implementation was carried out or the import in terms of cost outlay for that variation. Let me also say, I came across instances where counties indeed were deciding to vary the sites where equipment is going to be put. And that was a major also problem, although the Honorable Senator cautioned me on generalities, that they were changing the stations, and that compounded the problem of getting some of these problems out of the way in terms of implementing the MES. So to answer your question, nobody brought to me that aspect of a particular contractor not being able to fulfill.
From what you are saying.
Daftari, in your term at Ministry of Health, did you come across one gentleman called Morekwa?
Yes, I did.
What was the role of Morekwa in the MES project?
Morekwa was the chairman of the project, the implementation unit of this MES project.
Mm-hmm. So is he the one who was keeping away all the confidential documents from you?
Well, as far as I know, It is the principle.
Let me add, have you ever sat with him so that you know what is going on in his department, or as far as his docket is concerned?
Mr. Moreko attended the meetings which we were holding in the boardroom to discuss this matter.
Was he reporting directly to you?
Sorry?
Was he reporting to you, or was reporting to another office that reported to you?
I want to believe he was reporting to the principal secretary. He was not directly reporting to me.
Okay, can we conclude?
Before we conclude, Chair, I have a question on HCIT. You remember HCIT?
Yes.
The nerve center that I mentioned to you earlier on at Kenyatta National Hospital. The company called 7Cs executed an agreement or a contract with the ministry during your time, correct?
Yes.
In your view as a medical doctor yourself, was that program necessary and important, the implementation of this MES program?
My answer is yes.
Yes. And a contract was signed?
Correct.
Did you then, as minister, either by yourself or your officers, make a request to the Treasury for a letter of support in line with the letters of support given to other companies that you are contracting with the ministry?
Yes, I'm aware. I can recollect the principal secretary writing to the National Treasury.
Do you find it strange that all the companies associated with foreigners or directly foreign owned were easily and quickly given letters of support, despite the reservations of the Attorney General, but 7Cs, that is a locally owned company, was denied this letter of support?
I do, Honorable Senator.
Do you also find it strange, having been minister and a doctor yourself, superintending over the execution of that contract, that it was subsequently, summarily, cancelled?
I do, Honorable Senator.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Daktari will have closing remarks from members. Then we can wind up this meeting. Senator, Mary Senator.
I don't have anything to add.
Senator Omanga.
I have nothing. I'll just tell Balazi, thank you for joining for this.
Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Balozi, for giving us the information that you've been able to give us. But Balozi, I will be very honest with you and tell you that really the only thing that comes out of this conversation is perhaps a conclusion that to a great extent you were a stranger in your own ministry. In as far as this thing is concerned,
It's a system.
I think there are a lot more junior officers in that ministry who have much more information than what the minister at that time had, and it's unfortunate. Thank you.
Senator Langat.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that thank you, Daktari, for your presentation. And, we have learned a lot from market what you have presented concerning the relationship between maybe the minister and the permanent principal secretaries. You can see the gaps of coordinations, and I think this must be addressed so that harmony may be established, especially when it comes to structural information. Otherwise, I want to say, presentation, there are so many very important things that skipped you, especially the variations which affected the budget so much and affected the counties, yet you are not aware, and that is really unfortunate. Thank you.
Daktari, I want to thank you for waking up that early to engage with us. And like my colleagues have said, particularly Senator Tui, you really have come out as a person who was unable to gel well with the ministry when you are there. What you have told us is true. And this project has occasioned massive misapplication of public resources and taxing of counties of meager resources they get for a project that is devolved, that is run by the national government. And it's unfortunate that you are not able to get documentation from your own ministry, from your own government, because you are still serving the government of the Republic of Kenya. And if it is true that you are prevented, so to speak, from even accessing information, I want to encourage you. Like I said, the outcome of this inquiry can have devastating effects on some people. If you have any additional information that you have been unable to give to us, feel free to write to us within the next 2-3 days, including but not limited to the letter to Kenya Bureau of Standards, because if the content were true, they are quasi-criminal, and I wouldn't want you to go that route. And other things that we have mentioned to you. You remember all the 5 or so issues I mentioned to you. Variations done under your watch, you don't know. Letters of support written under your watch, you don't know. HCIT project signed under your watch, you think it was good, it has been summarily terminated. But the most critical, the more than 100% variation of the project done under your watch, you don't know. Agreements signed to commit counties of huge sums of money, 63 billion to speak, you don't know. So the fact that you don't know anything it tells volumes, from 95 million to 200 million. That is not pocket change. That money can change lives in villages in terms of water provision, rural access roads, kazi kwa vijana, and these small things is going down a different direction. You don't know. It's not very good, my brother.
Okay, thank you. We've been joined by Senator Gidiomi. Unfortunately, he's coming when we are winding up. Maybe you can introduce yourself and say hi to Balozi.
Yeah, Balozi, my name is Mongi Gidiomi. I've met you in Jezera and Sebra. I've just come, and it's good that you've been with us for the time you've been with the committee. I thought you were going to be longer so that I can also put 1 or 2 questions to you, but there is always next time.
Thank you, Honorable Senator.
I think, Daktari, let me say that it has been very difficult for you to get information from the ministry when you are really in charge of that particular ministry as a CS, which I believe procedurally you should have gotten all the information at your fingertips then. But it is sad that you are not getting the support that you are required to get. Despite all that, you have managed to answer what you are able to answer. I don't have much to say, but you are not hearing. You're not hearing. Yeah. You are not getting.
Now I can hear. I can hear.
So you have managed to answer what you can despite the challenges. We request you to respond to the issues we raised in writing, maybe preferably in 2 days, so that we can have something to write in response to that. But otherwise, I'll say thank you so much, and for also your concern and agreeing to wake up that early to respond to our issues. So otherwise, I'll say thank you so much and have a good day.
Anything to say from your end?
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, thank you. I want to thank the committee once again for this opportunity. And also, I want to thank the committee for the guidance But I have one thing to say about the healthcare information system, which indeed I said it is a good thing for the country, and that I do not understand what transpired after my departure from the ministry on 31st, because I recall, and I want it to be known by this committee, this was not a strange project within the MES project. This is a project which indeed through the G component, the same person who was contracted had implemented, and it should be recalled that it was the center nerve of the radiological equipment for connectivity, as the Honorable Senator has said. And this was demonstrated throughout the country when these equipments were being launched by the leadership. And indeed, it was going to alleviate the human resource capacity and expertise which we need. And therefore, failure to implement that project compromises the quality of the MES project. Secondly, I want to say, when I left the ministry, after my principal secretary wrote to the National Treasury, and I believe National Treasury wrote to the Attorney General, copies of which I had no privilege to see. When I left the ministry, Attorney General had responded to that request. And that response of the Attorney General, which came 2 weeks before I left, really placed the matter before the ministry, indeed National Treasury, because that letter was copied to me, to be able to kind of give certain information to the Attorney General, of which would have led that this project was viewed differently. And we have, from what I understand from the committee and from the media, this project has been canceled. I want to say that this was a very useful and it still remains relevant to the completion and execution of the MES project.
Thank you.
And therefore, I will be sending my written report, and I want the committee to know that this report is based on recollection without the benefit of documents. But I'll try my best to give the responses within the constraints I have. I thank you, Chair.
God bless you.
Thank you, Daktari. Have a good day. I'm sure it is summer in Geneva. You must be enjoying yourself.
No, we have Corona and the campaigning for Ambassador Amina.
Okay.
We wish her all the best.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Good day. Now I think we
can switch off first. We don't want to be overheard. Like those two.